Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we're going to be doing a 12-team full PPR mock draft from the 4th overall draft position, where I'll be breaking down and rewalking you all through Derrick Henry versus Alvin Kamara, and which of those two options I think is best suited for us in our fantasy leagues this season. I made a video about it back in about early June this year, but it's been a couple months now. I want to reaffirm my stance on that take here, and since it was one of my more popular videos, I thought it would be good to cover that one more time here. But one quick note today: draft season is rapidly heating up, and we're running out of time to make sure that we've got all the information and knowledge we need for this fantasy season. The SFS Draft Guide for 2021 is found in the description of today in every video, and you'll see it up on your screen here in just a second once we get into the mock draft. But you can head over there. It's one of the best values on the fantasy market this season. I've got my top 250 big board player profiles and analysis with in-depth situational analysis, draft day target range, and then some risk radars and sleeper and floor evaluations, in addition to my sleeper and bust master list for the 2021 fantasy football season, as well as some must-own players from rounds 1 through 20 of 12-team leagues. So there's about 60 players on that board overall, and there's a ton of information crammed into this guide that I think you all would have a great time getting to take advantage of. So that's an important note for me today. And then one more quick thing to touch on before we hit the intro and get into today's video. I am having surgery. It's currently like 5 in the morning when I'm recording this episode. I'll be posting it later on this morning, but I'm heading into surgery here in just a couple hours. Not looking forward to it, but that's fine. I'm hoping that I can recover quickly. I'm getting my wisdom teeth pulled, so I'm going to hopefully not have too long of a time frame before I can recover and get back to making episodes here. But the ultimate goal is that I can get back to that in a quick manner. But hopefully, if those of you who've been around here watching my videos every day are aware of that, in case for some reason I'm not able to make a video for Tuesday tomorrow, or if I look absolutely swelled and all puffy and just suffer through the video. So I thought I'd let you guys know that. Go check out the 2021 draft guide. And without further ado, let's hit that intro and get straight into the mock draft. Alrighty, here we go, guys. So one more time, that draft guide is up on your screen. I think that'll be incredibly beneficial to you all and will help you be winners on the singular most important date in our fantasy leagues this and basically every season here. Also, that free community Discord is also up on the screen as well, and you can check that out and get involved in some of these mock drafts in the future and such going forward here and other community events on the channel by joining that up and join some discussions around the channel as well based on some content here. So we love the NFL. We love talking all things football. So let's get this draft kicked off, and hopefully Kamara and Derrick Henry will be on the board. So Alvin Kamara actually goes at the 1-3. This isn't all that shocking to me since this is a full PPR format, but I will just talk through the situation just in case. So since the time I made that past video, I've actually nudged one player into the conversation who I actually think overtakes Derrick Henry for me, and that's Ezekiel Elliott, and that's most likely going to be my pick here. But the point being, in these full PPR leagues, that now creates even more separation for me in terms of who I think the better player is at that 1.4 overall draft position. And, okay, actually, now that I look at the board, Dalvin Cook is still available, so that will actually be the pick I make here. But I think that since some things have changed here this offseason, the conversation should now be shifted to Alvin Kamara or Ezekiel Elliott, because I think those are the more likely choices in that 1.3 range or that 1.4 draft position. Derrick Henry, for me, is slowly falling down the board. I don't expect him to fall any further than the 1.5 draft pick. In most leagues, this is full PPR, so I think this leans a little bit less in his favor and a little bit more in the favor of the pass-catching backs, like an Alvin Kamara, who is the most extreme situational based player in terms of a pass-catching running back with that type of upside. Zeke isn't quite an elite upside running back in terms of his pass-catching ability, but he certainly can get the job done, and we saw that last season. Derrick Henry straight up is not going to catch you passes. If you're drafting Derrick Henry, you're drafting him for his touchdown and raw rushing yardage potential, production, and value here. So again, I think that the situation and the discussion here needs to be a little bit more focused on the Alvin Kamara versus Ezekiel Elliott debate And that's something that I'm interested in taking a look at in a video here on the channel before draft season runs out here. Zeke somehow falls all the way down to the 1-8 after Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry. But we've got the CPU ADP drafter on today as, again, I'm recording this at the very early hours of morning as I'm having surgery in about 2 hours. So Dalvin Cook at the 1-4 was an incredible value pick there. I'm very surprised he actually fell to me at that spot. And being that it's a 12-team league format, I now feel extra good about my draft picks. So basically at the end of the day, I think that Kamara is the clear-cut choice over Derrick Henry, especially in PPR leagues, just to kind of quickly put that discussion to bed here as the draft clock is going to rapidly approach and creep up on me. And then I think that you get into more of a discussion as to Ezekiel Elliott or Derrick Henry. For me, I like Zeke a little bit more right now. He's been trending up in my draft guide and in my rankings all offseason long, and I feel very confident in the output that he can eventually give me. So it's becoming a little bit more of a three-player discussion now that I think it is just a two-player debate with Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara as I started it with this offseason. Zeke's nudged his way in there. He's certainly got his own fantasy value. Dak Prescott has a big impact on his value this season as well. So that's something we have to consider and take into account this season. But I think that things are getting a bit tighter here, and I'm very excited to see how things play out in that facet. So this is what I would have loved to happen in my paid draft that I posted on the channel on Sunday morning. Antonio Gibson fell all the way to me here at the 2-9. He actually went at the 2-3 in my 10-team mock the other day and kind of left me hanging. I ended up drafting Calvin Ridley off the board at my second-round draft choice because the amount of RBs that went early on in that draft was crazy. But it looks like I'm actually going to have my shot at Antonio Gibson in today's mock. So that's the pick I'm going to make here. Just want to double-check one more time. I do have the option of Darren Waller, but I think that Antonio Gibson is going to be a very, very elite level producer this season. He reportedly has this Christian McCaffrey role in that Washington football team offense. And while that offense might not be quite as good from a raw value perspective and total yardage output as a Carolina might be, he also might not have quite the top-end talent that McCaffrey might have. That usage, that pass-catching ability he has is incredibly valuable. And I very well think he could be a fringe RB1 and even assert himself as a very established RB1 this season. He finished as RB13 last year after suffering from turf toe at the end of the year, which really slowed him down. It turned into a bit of an ugly finish for him. But man, he barely even was the official starter for a lot of the games for Washington last season, and he was very, very productive. Again, I love his dynamic ability as both a pass catcher and a rusher for this team. And I think at the end of the day, the upside you're getting from that pick and a second-round running back, Darren Waller is a very great pick as well. Kevin Ridley has awesome upside, but I don't think the positional value is nearly as much, at least in the terms of Calvin Ridley. You can debate me if you'd like on the Darren Waller pick, but I think that getting running back there and two running backs of that upside and caliber is invaluable and is too good to pass on at this spot in the draft. So looking at the board here, Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson would be my top two wide receiver picks off the board. We're looking at our top three tight ends gone, so it's time to wait on those for at least a little while here. Right now I'm kind of deciding between J.K. Dobbins and those two receivers. I could go J.K. Dobbins here. This is a full PPR league. Obviously, things are going to be a little bit more swayed in favor of wide receivers, but that's why I think it's so great that I already have two running backs that catch passes. Dalvin Cook is not known for that ability, but he is certainly capable in that phase of the game. And Antonio Gibson is a little bit more known for that because that Christian McCaffrey role comes with being an avid pass catcher in your offense. So I'm going to go three running backs at the top of the board here. This is something I see some channels will tell you to do at every single draft. But there's going to be times, I'm going to tell you this right now, the value just will not be there, so don't lock into making that your strategy. It's awesome when it happens, and I have three players I think could finish as top 12 RBs. But if there's better value to take a wide receiver in the early third round, say Dobbins was gone, I'm not taking Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, Chris Carson every single time as my third running back over an Allen Robinson, a Keenan Allen, a Terry McLaurin. If Calvin Ridley, I've seen this happen before, he will slip into the early third round on occasion. I'm not passing on him there either if there isn't a J.K. Dobbins level running back threat on the table at that spot. So definitely don't pencil yourself in and lock yourself into one draft situation and just play that out every time. There's going to be times when you have really bad value doing that, and there's going to be times where that comes back and burns you pretty bad. So be able to adjust and pivot your draft strategy, have multiple approaches going in. That's why you got to do a lot of mock drafts, watch a lot of these videos. I have a ton of mock drafts on the channel from this offseason. Obviously, the longer we go back, the more outdated they get. News and stuff has happened, and so those picks might be a little bit skewed or whatnot due to the relevancy of them at the time. But still good tools to go back and watch and listen to some of my takes on individual players, which is what I think is the most valuable part of these mock drafts. So the late 4th round, I could come back and snag up one of these 2 tight ends if they're available for me in the early 5th. But I would really like to take a wide receiver here. My top 2 names I'm looking at right now is CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, both Dallas Cowboys. And right now I'm leaning CeeDee Lamb. And I actually did a video about these two and stacked them up against each other just straight up in a video about a month ago. And I had ultimately ended up, the ADP at the time was separated closer to 10 than it is now, separated at just 2. And their ADPs have gotten much, much closer together. I'll take CeeDee Lamb here as my wide receiver 1. I think at the end of the day, he has the best value in terms of his overall upside, and I think that his usage will help him have a higher floor than Amari Cooper as well, who's also coming into the season dealing with injuries. Not something that's too terribly groundbreaking or too terribly derailing to his overall output or season, but basically in that video, what I talked about was that CeeDee Lamb was the better value of the 2 draft choices. Maybe they'll finish very close to one another in overall output and production, but I just believe in what CeeDee Lamb can do in terms of what I saw from his route running last season, his awareness and his ability to make catches in the red zone. You saw that play against the Vikings. That was an insane catch. I just like what he's put on tape for me. And seeing that when Dak Prescott was on the field, he was only out-targeted by Amari Cooper by 5 in his first 5 games as an NFL player, it gives me a lot of confidence that CeeDee Lamb can take the next step up and produce at a very high level this season. So 5th round choice here, I can either go with TJ Hawkinson, which I think might be the pick that I want to make here, although Tyler Lockett is a very intriguing option. Robert Woods is a player I would love to have on this team. But I could set myself apart and get myself one of those top-tier tight ends. I'm trying to think here. If I pass on one of those tight ends, would I be able to get Brandon Ayuk in the 6th round? It's a stretch. There's a lot of receivers that still have to go off the board here. But I can't guarantee myself he'll be there. So the question begs, would I rather get myself my tight end 4 for the season drafted as the tight end 6 in this league? Or do I want to make one of those wide receiver draft choices? And let's check on Tyler Lockett here. Oh, he's got a groin injury. Those are always ugly. You can't really run with those. Man, I got to make a choice. So since I went with an upside play, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hope that at least one high upside wide receiver I like is still there for me. And I'm going to fade tight end in this draft. So Brandon Ayuk is at the 5'11", that's fine. There'll be other options I like on the table. I really like the idea of taking TJ Hawkinson, but I think that we're going to work on establishing this wide receiver core because I feel so confident in these running backs. CeeDee Lamb is a very high ceiling play, but I am a little bit worried about Dak Prescott's shoulder and whether or not he'll be able to give CD the most upside that he actually has. If you understand what I'm saying here, if Garrett Gilbert is out there, if Ben DiNucci, whoever ends up being named the Dallas Cowboys second string quarterback is on the field, CeeDee Lamb's fantasy value takes an immediate significant hit, and I would hate to not have invested again at the wide receiver position in the event that impacts his overall output. I hope Dak's out there. I hope he's healthy and ready to go, but you got to be prepared. Injuries to the quarterback position are often understated for the impact they have on wide receivers. There's very few players that can walk out and produce the same numbers when their quarterback's not on the field. So went Robert Woods there. Not exactly a ceiling play, but I love his floor, especially with Matt Stafford in this offense. I think it's a situation where we're looking at a player they can give us some pretty steady production here. So now in the third round, I think it might be time to turn around and draft a Chase Claypool potentially. Chase Edmonds is a player I have my eye on, but as my RB4, I would rather invest back into the receiver room. I believe he's still recovering from that ankle sprain. Yes, but that's not expected to be too significant of an issue. So I'm going to go out and make that draft choice here in just a second. I'm going to check over that position group one more time and make sure that's the name I'm most comfortable with, which it is. So Chase Claypool is the pick for us there in the late 6th round. Give me the player in this offense who I still think is going to go north of 100 targets this season. See the most touchdown production and output of the 3 receivers in Pittsburgh this year. He just has a better frame, a better wingspan, better size, speed, athleticism than both Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster. So I love him for that potential area of usage. He's also utilized a bit in the run game and the jet sweep motion. And we saw him. He had a 4-touchdown game last season because he was able to be used as a goal line player. They were just flipping him out the ball, giving him the ball on handoffs, on jet sweeps and whatnot, and he was finding the end zone again and again and again. He's the type of player that's not very easy to tackle. He has been a bit dinged up this offseason, but it's not something I'm overly worried about here, as I think that it's more circumstantial and less the fact that Chase Claypool is an injury-prone player. So don't worry too much about that. Chase should be fine this season. But man, it looks like I was right to pass on Chase Edmonds because he's still available for me on the board with my next pick. So that would be an intriguing RB4 option for me. Chase Edmonds is not an RB2. He should not be utilized in that facet of things for your lineups this season. I love to snatch up a Robbie Anderson here, a Brandon Cooks, but we'll just wait on those players. I feel very, very good in a full PPR league taking advantage of a player of Chase Edmonds' caliber who has a lot of upside. Don't get me wrong, his floor isn't amazing, but the fact that he specializes in being used as a pass catcher in this high-tempo offense that spreads the field out, gets their players in space. Chase Edmonds has been incredibly efficient when utilized in that way. I think things could work out very well here, and I think this could end up being a very good pick. He can be a bye-week streamer and a high-level streamer at that. Again, especially in these PPR leagues, this is the format that plays best to his strengths as opposed to a standard league would play more to Chase Edmonds' weaknesses. I think he can carve out a nice role for himself here. This is a 2-flex league, so I'll be starting 2 players in that flex position. He's currently slated as a bench player, so I could just insert him whenever I like his matchup, or if I end up losing one of my starting running backs to injury or whatnot. But the situation here looks like it's become a lot easier for me to make this draft choice, as Brandon Cooks seems like the clear option for me off the board. Gronk, I would love to have as my tight end option. I also see Ryan Tannehill there, who I'd love to have as my quarterback for this team. Jalen Hurts is an option I could try and wait for, though, in the next round. At the tight end spot, there's just a ton of names here. I'm going to take Brandon Cooks and get a 4th wide receiver I feel comfortable with because I do love having CeeDee Lamb, but he's not the best wide receiver 1 candidate. I do really like him as a wide receiver 2. But since we went RB heavy at the beginning, this is kind of showing you different situations that play out in these mock drafts. If you go 3 running backs early, you're probably not going to get yourself a solidified wide receiver 1. I think him and Robert Woods will be very, very close. I think that they'll finish somewhere around wide receiver 12 to 15. Lamb could finish a lot higher than that, but I think that having the stability of Robert Woods in that situation makes me feel a lot better about those picks I made. I do love my running back room. I wouldn't change that. But I do think that it certainly has caused the receiver room, although it is a very deep group already, I feel very good with the depth I have there. The top end upside isn't really there with the 3. Every player on the board here has a different combination of ceiling and floor. I would say Chase Claypool and CeeDee Lamb are my ceiling plays here, while Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods are my floor plays. Brandon Cooks has a situation offensively where he's going to be force-fed the ball. There's not a clear competition for targets for him in that Houston Texans offense. The reason his ceiling isn't elite because this team is going to be passing the ball so much is because of the quarterback play. If you told me today he's getting Deshaun Watson back, I think he would probably soar up the boards at least into the 6th round with that Odell Beckham Jr. territory. But being that Tyrod Taylor is likely his QB, that hurts his fantasy value, and rightfully so. But then I think that, again, Chase Claypool might have a little bit of a lower floor but a higher ceiling just because it might be a little bit dependent on touchdowns in terms of how high he can actually get here. And then Robert Woods is purely going to come down to he's just been one of the safest fantasy choices at the wide receiver spot for a couple years now. So I will take Rob Gronkowski here in the 9th round. The reason I like Gronk, and this is not going to be a volume play, but the reason that I like drafting him in leagues is I feel like I can sleep at night knowing that Gronk is either going to score me a touchdown and make my week, or he's not going to score a touchdown. And that's what it's going to come down to, plain and simple. Sometimes he will give you the yardage you're looking for, but it does make you feel good that he's at least one of Brady's top options down the red zone. Again, he's not going to see 10 passes in a game, but even if he can catch a touchdown and 40 yards receiving, that's good enough for me. Taking him in the early 9th round, it's not really a situation where I'm too dependent on him and I need him to do too amazing of things. Otherwise, my league's not going to play out. That's fine. I feel very confident and solid in how I've constructed the rest of this team, so I think they can kind of make up the difference that we're lacking right now. The one thing that I have missed out a little bit on, and it makes me going to have to carefully attack this position down the stretch of the board here. I did miss out on my Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill, Jalen Hurts tier of quarterbacks. It all fell after I took Gronk there. So now we're going to have to pivot here. I'm going to wait a couple rounds, maybe just one, and take Kirk Cousins here eventually. A very low ceiling play. He actually did finish as an SFS Consistency King, which is a feature of the Draft Guide collection. Basically, we just have floor and ceiling markers. They're statistical markers. And we have numbers set for what percentage of the time you have to reach those numbers in order to qualify for this unique stat. Kirk Cousins, I want to say Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, I think missed it by a hair, but Aaron Rodgers and Pat Mahomes were the quarterbacks that reached both their ceiling and floor at a percent rate high enough for them to be characterized as consistency kings. So Kirk Cousins was not any bum for the stretch of the imagination in last fantasy season. Not an amazing player, not a fantastic and unmissable draft pick, but certainly a player that has a lot of lineup value, especially as a quarterback too, being that he can come in on a bye week or if your player gets injured and provide a lot of lineup value. So Darnell Mooney at the 10-9, his ADP is one that's been rising since that Anthony Miller trade. The more we've seen from Justin Fields this offseason, the higher I think people are rating him on draft day. I like the pick here. Give me that upside. Field stretching ability. I think his target share will increase from the 2020 season, where he was very, very good as a rookie. Even burnt some pretty high class corners. Let's see here. Do I want to go out and make that? So it looks like there's 5 quarterbacks before Kirk? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5. And ADP has them separated by about 20 picks. So I'm going to roll the dice here. I'm going to make one more non-quarterback draft choice, and then we'll come back and see how things fall for us. I could also, here's what I'm going to do. All right. We're adjusting the strategy. So I'm going to reach a little bit and take Justin Fields off the board as my quarterback 1. This is not the end game here. I'm drafting Justin Fields as a late season play. I'm going to give myself the potential to have league-winning upside in the late stages of the season. The reason I did not draft Deshaun Watson is because we still don't know who he is going to be playing for, if he's going to play at all, what that circumstance is. So for now, I've kind of removed him from my board. I think if he can fall to you in about the 13th round, which is where his ADP was a couple weeks ago, boom, must-draft player, whatever. There's not too much risk. Go ahead and you can get yourself a very, very good quarterback at that spot. I'm taking a player who is more of a dart throw. He's a high upside play. We haven't actually seen Justin Fields play ones in the NFL for a whole 60-minute game. I think he can be pretty darn good, though. Give me Allen Robinson. Give me Darnell Mooney. Give me that run game. I like all the stuff in that situation. Hopefully Matt Nagy can give him what he needs to be productive. But he is not going to be my starter for this team. I'm going to come out and try and draft Kirk Cousins. And I might do that in the 13th round because it looks like I've got a bit of a buffer here. And then we're gonna start Kirk. Theoretically, if this were a real league, I'm gonna start Kirk Cousins until Justin Fields gets the chance and proves to me that he can be used as a starter. So I'm gonna go Russell Gage here over Marvin Jones. a tough choice, but they're very closely matched. I think Marvin, we haven't seen him play with DJ Chark on the field, but I think he has a very real chance to at least set himself up to have success with Trevor Lawrence in that offense over a DJ Chark. I've talked about this offseason. I think it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say the most veteran wide receiver in the room who's had production with multiple teams should walk into Jacksonville and gain the trust of his rookie QB, who we all talk about as a generational talent, a great thrower of the football, a very, very good prospect. I like that situation. It's going to be a high-volume passing team. They have a cake schedule. They're going to walk through this thing. I think Marvin Jones will have some really big games this year. He's certainly due for some busts because that offensive line is so bad that if they play tough opposition, they're going to get run over, and Trevor Lawrence is going to get trampled, which is going to make it really hard for him to find his targets. But that's a closer choice for me now than it was at the start of the season. So Russell Gage is another player we've seen his ADP rise this year. Thankfully, Kirk Cousins is still on the board. We're just going to square that away and take care of that draft choice right now. Or is he? Did I miss him? No, I didn't. All right. I was a little afraid there for a second. I was like, well, looks like it's Cam Newton time in the last round, which I actually wouldn't mind that either. I think Cam Newton has a really, really good fantasy lineup value as long as he can lock down that starting job. He's looked good this preseason. I mean, he's looked a lot more accurate, a lot more precise. Not perfect. His arm probably isn't quite as good in terms of accuracy as Mac Jones, but Mac Jones does not give us that rushing value and that danger level in the red zone for opposing defenses, which really sets them apart for fantasy. And at the end of the day, the passing upside in that offense isn't that great. So the fact that Cam can add value with his legs is what makes you really like him as a fantasy threat. We're not going to go with the second tight end today since we've locked down Gronk. I'm just going to worry about that on the waiver wire with the stream option if it comes down to that later this season. Running back room is virtually all dried up here. Maybe I'll take Ramondre Stevenson as a late round flyer. Amon-Ra St. Brown is really flying up the boards, which is interesting to me. So is Terrace Marshall. Both players have been impressive in the preseason. I'm actually going to take who I think might be the wide receiver one for his team this year. Give me some Jacoby Myers. This is a name we don't respect at all in fantasy, it seems like. But him and Cam Newton seem to have a very real connection, and the targets are there. The target share was there last season. The touchdown and overall upside isn't so much, but the fact that he is the most targeted player in that offense gives me hope that in a PPR league he can at least lock down enough passes to give us wide receiver 4 or 5 value here for our lineup. So not probably a player that's going to be seen in my starting lineup all too often, and especially having Russell Gage, Darnell Mooney, Brandon Cooks as reserve options there. It's unlikely I end up playing him at some point, but still a pick I like nonetheless. I will address defense here. You see, unfortunately, the defenses I like are all rising up the board. The Dolphins and the Broncos have started to make themselves a little bit more prominent on draft day. I don't want to wait. So I'm gonna go with Miami. I think Denver is just a tick below Miami because I think that their back end got a lot better, but I still trust Xavier Howard, and although Byron Jones was basically burnt toast last season, I still trust him a little bit to a lesser extent. I trust Byron Jones a little bit more than I trust having Pat Surtain in that secondary. Bryce Callahan, Kyle Fuller should be the part. They should do their job there. But at the end of the day, I just think that having a corner in a class who is just higher than all of those players, and Xavier Howard that got you 10 picks last season, he can do his job, come out there. Brian Flores' defense is incredibly well coached. He can put that group together and make them very strong. I like the disguise zone blitzes he runs. That stuff's all great. And then obviously Denver has a very formidable pass rush as well. It's close for me, but if you're looking for a middle-tier defense, at least in the way that they're drafted, I don't think that the Browns defense should be drafted before Miami or Denver, but that's just how things go. Same with the Bills, the Colts even. They don't have a good enough of a pass rush to make me feel good about that, but that's just how things play out here. We've got one more draft choice. Maybe I'll just go with my Ramondre Stevenson flyer pick, and that looks like the way I'm going to go here. Give me Ramondre Stevenson. I could have went with a Cam Newton, filled out that quarterback position room a little bit more. There was some decent receivers, but that group got deep enough for me after we pretty much prioritized that unit late in the draft today. Again, Justin Fields was my first quarterback taken off the board here, but I don't plan to start him until, obviously, he breaks out in that Bears lineup. So Kirk Cousins will hold down the fort in the meantime for this group. I feel very good about that defense. I love my top 3 running backs. Give me Dalvin Cook, Antonio Gibson, and J.K. Dobbins. And then CeeDee Lamb, Robert Woods, Chase Claypool, Brandon Cook, Darnell Mooney, Russell Gage, Jacoby Myers. I think that rotation will give me enough upside and floor value combination every week to win my matchup if I make the right lineup choices. So I feel really good about this draft. Add in the fact that I've got Chase Edmonds, Ramondre Stevenson down there on the bench that have really nice upside. Their floor value basically doesn't exist. It's that low. I mean, Chase Edmonds will not score touchdowns. That's going to be the area of the field where we see guys like James Conner come in and do his damage. But that doesn't mean that he can't be an incredibly efficient player and give us RB2 value at times in PPR leagues and be a standard RB3 play in these PPR leagues. So I really like today's mock draft. I think things came together very well. Again, please note, guys, and be prepared. I may not have a video for you all on Tuesday. I'm really hoping that's not the case, but there's the potential that might not happen depending on how I feel after my surgery. So I'll see you guys soon, hopefully. And thank you all so much for watching today's video. Leave a like before you head out today, and subscribe if you're new around here. Peace out.